Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Welcome to this episode of Branding the Beltway. I'm your host, Stacey Piper, and today I'm really excited. We have with us old friend and colleague, Karen Scott. She is the Director of Federal Marketing at Denodo. Denodo is a global data management company known for its Denodo platform, which delivers trusted AI-ready data in real time and in a fraction of the time compared to traditional data lakehouses. Karen, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. I'm so excited. I've been doing this for longer than I will admit. So public sector marketing, I've had a ton of different roles. It could be anything from managing just U.S. federal, all of public sector and SLED, including like global. I've been worldwide public sector. So it's run the gambit over the years. Small companies, large companies, global companies. And sometimes my roles have been individual contributor, or I've had to manage, full-size teams. And so it's been a great run so far, and I'm excited to see how it continues.
Excellent. Well, and I think that's one of the reasons this topic makes so much sense with a guest like you, because of your various perspectives, right? You can talk about this from all angles. We're going to talk about this first from a high level, as if we're talking to CXOs from government contractors and technology firms. And then after we go through that, we'll come back and talk about the same topic with government marketers and technology marketers. So really, when you step into a strategic marketing role and don't have the CMO title, maybe you're an individual contributor or the company's just not large enough to have wanted to invest in a CMO, how do you show up as a strategic marketing leader and shift the conversation from being like a service bureau or simply doing marketing to actually driving growth for the business?
So it's a great question because it's something that I've had to work with throughout my career. I basically recommend for anyone that they need to showcase that they have a strategic mindset. Ideally from the beginning, like when you're interviewing with a company, basically but you can start at any time. So as you feel comfortable, you want to basically start developing three basic leadership skills, three basic capabilities. One is that kind of big picture mindset. So it's one thing to be really articulate around your specific marketing metrics, like that your campaign's inside and out, how many clicks you're getting, how many leads you're getting, what your conversion is. But what the C-suite wants to, what they care about is how does that translate, that success that you're seeing, translate into like revenue, pipeline creation. You want to be able to showcase that you have an understanding of that full customer journey. How is this helping your competitive advantage? So I think that big picture mindset is really important. And then second, basically, you want to showcase that you have this vertical expertise, that you have done your research and you continue to do your research. You know what, government mandates are coming down. You have an understanding or always working towards having an understanding of what's keeping government leaders up at night for the personas that you care about. I think from a standpoint of just knowing that by having all that information kind of top of mind, you're going to be able to effectively impact your messaging to address those mandates, to address that government expertise. And brings a lot of trust from your leadership, like, oh, this person's got this. They understand the market and or at least knows it well enough to set a good direction for it and input for it. So having that kind of government expertise, whether you're supporting not only just a vertical like public sector, or maybe you're regional based. And so just understanding whatever your territory is, what is relevant there. And then third, you have to showcase that you have leadership skills. Essentially, that doesn't mean that you have to manage a team. What have you done? Take stock of when you've actually influenced something proactively. Take stock of, when you've challenged the status quo. To me, it looking at a sales funnel and, marketing impacts so many different areas of that funnel, or it should. Where do you see, like, maybe you don't have purview over something, but hey, if we could tweak this, capability in-house, or I could get more support in this area, then that'll greatly impact how well my campaigns run or what have you. So kind of looking outside of where, your role is and how the company can support your team, I think is also really important and shows leadership when you can be proactive and tell leadership like, hey, if we invest more here, if we get more support here, here's what's, how much that's going to help us from a funnel perspective. So I think if you can showcase those three qualities around that big picture mindset, knowing your vertical, your region at a very like detailed level, and then having that leadership, showcasing that leadership throughout your career, I think that helps people put you in that mental kind of CMO strategic thinker type bucket.
Absolutely. There's so many little tidbits I took from that because, right, like the proactive versus reactive, right? Like leaders are looking for opportunities, identifying gaps and coming up with solutions to fill them. And if you take that mindset and that stance, then people will see you as a leader. But if you're just waiting for someone to assign you a task, of course they're going to see you more as a taskmaster. And I love that, like speaking their language, right? We always focus on this as marketers when we're talking about our customer messaging and our content, but it goes for, managing up and across the organization too, right? Like if they don't care about clicks, if that doesn't matter to them, we can't be talking about how the sausage is made. We have to be talking about the things that they're tracking. So it makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to us, the clicks, not to not give them credit, but yeah, how does it translate to what leadership cares about?
Absolutely. So I'm wondering if you can detail how taking this CMO mindset affects how you look at your team. Does it impact decisions around what marketing truly needs to live in-house versus what can be handled by external partners? Or how do you explain those trade-offs to executives?
Yeah, so that can be challenging because every company is so different. The resources I've had at one company has always been completely night and day different from the resources that I'll have at another company. So really getting an understanding of the whole corporate ecosystem that is at your disposal. I think one of the things that with the public sector role is unique is that, we're seeing corporately as a vertical. But what I try to explain is that truly we're really horizontal. So, there could be whole teams at my company that works on like banking and messaging towards that industry. And I'm like, hey, I can leverage some of that. It might get me 80% there on talking to like the Fed Reserve banks. Same with like supply chain or some other types of like content or campaigns that are being run at a corporate level. I can use, 50% of that or 70% of this or something gets me 90% there. I think it's important as marketers within like a marketing team that is global, corporate, what have you, while we're there to support our region or vertical, we have to make the most of everything that's being built around us, and showcase that we're maximizing those resources because leadership is happy when, we're leveraging, we're not spending dollars on reinventing the wheel. And it makes us, better partners because I'll also share, hey, I've developed something public sector focused, but it touches a lot on supply chain because I did this for the DoD or what have you. And so I can share it back and forth. And we have fantastic, our customer use cases, the scale at which that government runs is just impressive and very impressive to very, Fortune 500 corporations. So it is definitely relevant. So there's an education process there as well. So maximizing the resources that you have, figuring out the resources that you have, and then knowing the gaps. So maybe like PR. I love the power of PR. I think it's super helpful all along the funnel journey for a prospect, from getting to know us from a branding perspective, and then helping potentially accelerate deals depending on what the messaging in that PR is. But typically PR is centralized. And sometimes it's supportive to some degree, where I can give them direction and messaging, and then they can run with the campaigns that I need. But in other cases, I've been at companies where it's just completely out of scope. Like, we can't deviate from standard corporate messaging, and so I had to make a decision. Do I take budget dollars from my budget to support um, actually, like, doing PR via a vendor, a contractor? And I think that's, when you're spending dollars on it and you have to show that in your budget, you have to be able to also showcase ROI. Like, why is PR suddenly sort of like traditional lead gen campaign, where they can much more easily see how things, move down from a sales perspective in a CRM? The metrics aren't, a little more fuzzy on the PR side. So you have to be able to make the case of where this fits in, how this supports that uh, journey for a prospect, from getting awareness as a company down to revenue. How does this support deals that we have in play? Maybe I'm targeting specific messaging in the PR that we're delivering because we have some big deals around specific deliverables that are relevant for a program out there. And so I want to make sure that Denodo is like top of mind. So, or any company that I'm working for. And so being able to build that business case to justify that vendor ecosystem that you have for when you need third-party contractors to fill those gaps, I think is really important.
Absolutely. And in your experience, have there been things that were more effectively outsourced or least effectively outsourced that marketers and CMOs and CXOs might want to look at first?
I think you have to start, like, I look at everything in terms of that funnel. So I start at the top, from a brand perspective. What do we look like? What are my resources there? And then I work down. Um, where do I have resources to fulfill those areas of the funnel? And then where do I have those gaps? So that's my kind of level of priority. The other factor that I take in is from my actual, like, funnel metrics. So maybe I'm really strong at lead generation, and I'm really kind of hurting at that middle part of the funnel. Then finding more support services in that middle of the funnel is going to be more important than at the top. So I gotta, and it will change year by year. Based on, like, okay, maybe I solved that middle of the funnel and I'm getting tons of meetings. I'm getting good conversion. Like, okay, I cracked that nut. And then now I gotta, like, okay, work on my next. Every 6 months, I'm like reevaluating like, what's working, what's not, what can I, like, not have to go full force on, and what do I need to throttle back? Because, and then, we have administration changes and just market changes in general that could affect, suddenly, like, there's some big mandate that comes down the line, which wasn't here 3 months ago. So it makes you have to reevaluate everything. It's just keeping up with all of that, and seeing, hey, the resources that I have aligned, do they still work?
Absolutely. I love that you actually mentioned that at the end about reevaluating and constantly, level setting both what's happening within the organization and outside of the organization, regulatory um, or otherwise, because, right, that also can help, I don't know, make the case for outsourcing certain things when you need that extra help, is that you might not always need that help. So if you were to hire somebody with that special skill set, like a PR person, and then all of a sudden you didn't need help in that kind of credibility earned media type of space, and you needed help more in appointment setting,
Mhm.
that's probably not the same skill set and the same kind of FTE. And so
Right.
it gives you more flexibility, it sounds like.
Yeah, and leadership, part of that CMO kind of strategic mindset is understanding where you need that support at that particular time and being able to pivot as a result.
Yes, I like that. So anytime you mention vendors to leadership, I'm sure they see dollar signs. What's worked for you when it comes to asking leadership for the budget and authority to engage with vendors, especially when marketing doesn't always own all of those decisions?
That's the million dollar question because I think leadership, I've literally had leaders ask me like, okay, what have you seen that like works that you're going to invest in and that always works? I'm like, it does not exist. Like it's different and it's constantly changing. I wish I had found a silver bullet. I would, I would invest that, like, something that I can invest in, put $1 in, and like a 10 back guaranteed. Um, I'm still searching for that. And if someone finds it, please share. But I try to present things as like tests. So if I see a gap in my, where I feel like a resource could help externally as a vendor, a contractor, I present that as like, look, I'm seeing this gap. I really feel like if we get some type of added support in this area, it will help us achieve greater results. I want to test out. Um, whether it's working with a third party or what have you, having a specific project where I can see if that test will, it'll be measured. I'll completely take ownership of good or bad, or if it made no difference. And then, I think the gut leadership looks at that and they're like, okay, I'm placing a bet and I'm going to be fully accountable for it. And I will make strategic decisions based on the results of that test. And they're like, okay, like we don't know everything. And never have I ever. I know I don't know everything. And, I might get recommendations from my ecosystem and I try to build that out as much as possible. You're part of like the Mavens group and we'll share ideas and even government leaders just building those relationships with, your actual market, but in a non-marketing relationship where you can bounce ideas off. And it's been super helpful for me, but in placing those kind of bets, and I'll run those tests and that's exactly how I treat them. So I do my due diligence around measuring outcomes, progress, and if it works, then I've instantly built my case to like, let's make this a more permanent part of our ecosystem. And otherwise, if it doesn't work, I stand by like, okay, this didn't work. I'm gonna pivot. We're gonna do something else, or try something else. And, so long as I keep to like, I'm not investing and then just kind of like, oh, I don't know if that worked, or like, you gotta be methodical about the investments that you're making. And again, like I'm constantly reevaluating, and everyone knows that. And so you get trusted that way. And so I keep running my tests. That's kind of how I position it, and it's been successful for me. And it's helped me justify, the investments in trying new things. And sometimes you can get some really great deals too, because your partners that you're telling them, I'm very honest with them. Like, hey, this is something I'm trying out. This is my hypothesis. If it works, great. And, obviously I will continue investing if this works. And so they have my vendor partner, like they have that understanding as well. It's no surprise. And if we know the metrics that we're trying to achieve, and they feel confident that if they can help me, which they want to, I'll keep reinvesting. I mean, it just wouldn't make business sense not to. So that's
I
my
love that. I love that because, right, like by piloting things and positioning it as like a test and learn opportunity, you're always innovating too, right? Like people aren't growing and getting breakout, acknowledgement if they just keep doing the same old thing and they're just follow the leader doing everything that everyone else is doing. But if you're really trying to be proactive, like a CMO would, and cutting edge, you are trying new things and you're building that culture with your leadership team that we're gonna try these things that are working, whatever, in B2B marketing or B2C marketing. And if it works, great, we're going to be ahead of the pack. And if it doesn't, we'll fail fast and we'll learn and we'll pivot. So, and I love that, being accepting that CMO responsibility, you're trying to be a good steward of the funds and the investments, and the leadership team will recognize that. I love that. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to in-house marketing leaders and as if we are implementing this kind of vendor ecosystem and really working the CMO position even without the title. This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and OrangeSlices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, un-agency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. OrangeSlices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with OrangeSlices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit OrangeSlices.ai. Welcome back to Branding the Beltway. We're talking about how to work like a CMO, even if you don't have that title, and how to orchestrate a vendor community to support you if you have gaps in your team or you're slight on resources. Welcome back to Karen. Let's jump right in. Once you have partners in place, these different vendors that you've talked about running tests with, how do you orchestrate them so they're working together and not duplicating any effort from another vendor or from your in-house resources or corporate teams?
So I think that's where that CMO mentality really shines. And I keep going back to my my funnel imagery because I'm really into imagery. I think it helps showcase kind of your strategy. And I start connecting. I do the integration basically of kind of where my kind of third party, where my ecosystem is filling in those gaps in my funnel, and how one ties into the other from an investment flow. What parts of the funnel that they're specifically supporting us in that kind of lead journey to revenue. So it helps me paint that picture. And people can clearly see, like, okay, she's making investments here, 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 and they're addressing these parts of the sales process. So that is usually all they care about. Like, it's not just like, oh, I know, I have a buddy over at such and such company, and I always like, I just always use them for X. No, I'm working with this partner because they are a partner with us and they want us to be successful. And they're specifically, the goal for them is to impact this metric for us in the sales journey. Like it's very well like documented on what the goals are and where we're at in achieving those. So I think so long as you keep that translation and you always know kind of the latest of where you're at in achieving those metrics, then there's a lot of more confidence from leadership on the investments that you're making and how you're orchestrating them to maximize ultimately the revenue for your team.
That's really exciting. Have you found by orchestrating this way that some of the vendors, partners, contractors in this ecosystem actually start collaborating directly in service of you and your programs?
Oh, absolutely. So like one of the core areas in the funnel that at one of the companies I was working for, we had really like I wasn't making my pipeline number, and I'm like, okay, where's the breakdown? We're getting lots of like good leads. I was making a point of like going to a lot of our events and listening to folks. So I was building relationships with some of these people, and I knew the conversations that had been started. I'm like, how did this not progress? Like I just didn't get it, and so I started digging in Salesforce and looking at activity history. I mean, because a sales process is a team sport. Marketing should be involved all along the way, but we don't have sole responsibility of the whole funnel. I'm not calling the folks. So I have an SDR team or a BDR team, whatever you call them, at your company. And they're the ones that are next in line where I pass the baton and I say, hey, I started this great conversation, or, I've gotten interest from this persona and this government leader, and they're supposed to pick it up and then like continue that conversation. And I'm looking at the activity history in Salesforce and I'm seeing like, you have a lot of activity, but it's all like email. And I'm like, what in the world? So I ran a test. I outsourced this function where we prioritize calling. And our goal was not only to call, but figure out what was the average number of call attempts that was necessary for our types of leads. And because I was curious on how different it was for our um our commercial side. So I, I was able to use this test, make an investment in a third party, bring that data back. And we had discovered it took 9 attempts to even like connect with a typical government uh, leader. That was a very different metric than what was on the commercial side. And so I could go back to my leadership and say, look, we need an FTE. We need to we ended up bringing that vendor, our actual person through the contractor, in as a full-time FTE, you know. And it was great. And we made that business case. We had, 6 months of like data of just like how our pipeline grew and at the end of the day, it was just a change in process. It it wasn't that, our leads were bad, that campaigns, we need to double the number of campaigns. Sometimes you have to look at it, analytics are great, but you have to understand the underlying, like what's driving the data and see if process tweaks can sometimes be made, things like that. And so, you know, if we ever have an issue in this area, like maybe that SDR leaves or gets promoted, and then I might need to like, okay, like backfill, then decisions are made. Do I backfill externally and as a contractor again to test people out and then bring them in as FTEs, or, how do we want to work this? But to me, that constant evaluation, that the ownership of, those parts of the funnel that marketing can impact, that is, how you keep that strong kind of day-to-day vendor management, speaking to vendors and letting them know exactly, again, those goals, those expectations. And they're typically, if they're good partners for you, they want to achieve those with you. And there should never be any bottlenecks, at least not from, them or from leadership, if you're maintaining that accountability.
Absolutely. I love that because the example you gave, which was a great success story, was really showcasing this notion that, marketing is a horizontal function that should be coordinated together with sales and other product functions, et cetera, so that you can be successful, but also in, acting like a CMO, like really trying to get to the bottom of why you weren't getting that acceleration in the funnel or things were getting stuck, and trying to solve it and being proactive about that. It sounds like you have a lot of experience managing vendors like an extension of your team. And so, from a tactical standpoint, I'm wondering what strong day to day vendor management looks like for you, including, setting priorities and expectations.
Um, I think a core uh, tenet is around just being vigilant on your metrics, um, the making sure that you're providing for your vendor community, you know, the goals ahead of time, that they're aware of what a successful outcome is and looks like for you, and your team, and having the messaging that they need because they're also experts in their areas. So if you come having done your homework and knowing like, look, I need to expand this area of my funnel. Here's what I've tried. Here's the messaging that I'm typically using. Likely they'll have recommendations because they're doing the same thing, across tons of companies and have been doing it for years. That's why they're in business. So you need to be able to be collaborative with them because they might make recommendations on how you can tweak things, and they're also going to test things out. And they're typically very open about that. And and you work together and you're constantly, iterating on what's going to work for your company and their services and to get across that goal marker that you want. And but you got to be able to dig in terms of the data. I went into marketing thinking I didn't need to be that, I didn't want to be technical. I'll go into marketing. Like, oh my God. I've never been like, I love it, but it was reluctant at first, but um I think it's can be the secret sauce to any marketer is just rolling up your sleeves and really digging in to the analytics and then the data behind the analytics, getting lovely reports from corporate, and sometimes folks will just blindly trust. I trust nothing. I'm like, wait. I'm like, this is saying I'm at like 84% achievement. I'm like, I question that. So I'll dig in. I'm like, okay, what's it counting? What's it not counting? And I'll uncover that. Um, and I'm trying to like do the same for my vendor relationships. I'm, making sure that we are showcasing all the goodness of their efforts. And I tell them, I want to be your champion. Like I want to keep investing in you. If you're going to keep making me successful, then it's a quid pro quo. Like I'll keep investing. So we know it. And when things don't work out, like they're like, they respect like we tried, didn't quite work out. And then I might come back to them if our initiatives change or I figure out like, oh, now we could really like leverage their expertise. Like this is the right time. And they know that I'll do that. So I think that is just your ecosystem should always be growing. And expanding, and the vendor community starts earning a lot of respect and trust. So it goes both ways, definitely. And just keep working with the folks and recommendations. I mean, again, aside from the vendor community that I work with, most of them were prior marketers as well. Like you started your own company, but we met when you were working for a specific company and doing marketing, and we were co-presenting on things, and now it's like, I hope that at some point I can leverage your company's resources, and as soon as the timing's right, we'll test something out together. So that's the way it should be.
Absolutely. Yes, we did that account-based marketing workshop together.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. And I love the idea that while you don't want to be a bottleneck for your vendors, you can't just like set it and forget it. You have to engage with them and tell them everything you're thinking and feeling and experiencing so that they can be part of the solution. And I've seen before, and I work with all kinds of vendors too on behalf of clients. And when I was in-house, I've seen it help. I've seen a failed program, right? A failed pilot actually in the long run help them with a process change or a new program or service offering development where they can now fill my need, or do better at implementing that program because of the feedback they got and the experience they had when we were doing a pilot together.
Absolutely. Good vendors, they want to know when things aren't working because, yeah, it helps them improve their craft as well. And, maybe you're not continuing the relationship as a result, but they get better too. And they're learning. It's, the one, constant that we can count on is change. So as things change in the market and within our companies, we have to be open to adjustments and being agile in the decisions that we're making and the strategic investments that we're making. So it's a partnership. It's really how, I consider vendors part of our team, and I treat them as such. They're in it with me, and hopefully that encourages them as well to want to, over deliver. So
Absolutely.
win-win.
Every day, let's grow together. Um, so before we close up, I wanted to find out, it sounds like it's relatively straightforward to demonstrate success when a pilot goes well and you can keep investing. But are there any tips of things you've found to be helpful to demonstrate to leadership that your ecosystem is delivering real value so you can continue to get budget, earn that seat at the table in the CMO spot, even without the title, and keep operating at that strategic level?
Well, I talked about just digging in, becoming that data expert, know your metrics, how you're tracking success. I think the other really things that something that helps you shine is if you can be an advocate of what's successful in your region, in your territory, and champion it across the company. I mean, if you've discovered something in how you work your funnel and it's generating added revenue for your market, shouldn't the rest of the company be interested in like seeing that success and testing if it applies in other areas? One of the areas that I have been always doing a lot of testing in is digital marketing. I think there's, especially now with AI, oh my God, the number of like new companies that are out there doing everything from automated like AI run SDRs, uh, automation around LinkedIn connections. There's all kinds of automation around just people visiting your websites and how you can automatically engage with them, providing very easy visibility to um, attraction you're making within like ABX account, like strategic accounts, your ABM programs, beyond even what like the man base and some of these other tools that have been around for longer provide. And I've been testing them within federal, and I'm like, you know, reaching government folks is a tough hurdle. And if it works for federal, I know it'll work for commercial. So what I'll do is I'll showcase successes that we're achieving on the federal side, and I'm like talking to our digital leaders, and I'm saying like, guys, like, look at this, look at this. They're like, whoa, like, and I'm like, this can really be a game changer for us as a company if we were to adopt these things. So again, part of that CMO mentality is the company. So yes, you manage and you're accountable and your OKRs are all oriented towards, your vertical, your region, whatever your territory is. But part of that CMO mindset is like, how can what you're doing, what you're learning, help the company as a whole? And so being that champion for whether it's a vendor, contractor, or even new internal process changes, like how can I get that now rolled out to the rest of the company and get attention from the rest of the company around what the good things that you're learning and doing, and can we apply it uh, across the board? I think is really kind of that next level now of just being a good company steward and growing. So
That makes a lot of sense. And I love that kind of all boats rise mentality, right? Like it goes for the all boats rise with you and the vendor. If
mhm.
there's success with you and the other departments in the organization, like sales, that you're elevating or other, regional type teams. So yeah, if we just keep trying to all succeed, we'll do so together. Um, Karen, I know that we didn't talk about this before, but it struck me in this conversation. I think most of your experience is in technology and software companies,
Yeah.
but and you talked a lot about the funnel and everything related to marketing with the funnel. And a lot of, I mean, I know that all GovCons have a funnel, so to speak, being their pipeline of opportunities they're chasing, but not all of them are products or SaaS type companies. There a lot are services, and the funnel is simply opportunities, not like lead gen funnel.
Mhm.
And do you have any thoughts on how marketers and services companies can look for these gaps and take that CMO role and orchestrate vendors?
Yeah, I mean, whether your product is a software application, which the majority of my career has been, from a services standpoint, I've had a few organizations where we were a service, and so I was selling subscriptions, or we're marketing, whether it's subscription services or consulting, what have you, kind of small systems integrator type work. We still had the funnel. We still had like marketing was still responsible for brands. Marketing was still responsible for getting to really understand the personas of the individuals that should be interested in your company, that you want to have start conversations with. Because to me, that's ultimately, when I think of the funnel, it's those individuals that I'm trying to get in front of. I want them to know our company name. I want them to know where we fit in architecture. I want them to know, like, hey, if there is some type of project or program that has to do with data or AI, like they should be talking to us. So, I think the funnel has always represented just a way for me to showcase and for my team to see, like, take that government leader, whoever that persona is, cybersecurity, AI leader, whoever they are, and then showcase them going through that engagement. So whether it's they're the ones that are having to fulfill a mandate or what have you, and they're going to be putting out an RFI or an RFP, like there's still individuals behind those types of engagement and opportunities. And how am I touching that individual across, like, just along the funnel? So from a brand perspective, the PR that they're seeing about us, and then the messaging that is going to change of what I want them to see at different parts of the state, like the funnel stages. So if we're already in an RFI, RFP standpoint, you know, what I want to communicate is going to be vastly different than what I wanted to at a very high level, just introductory stage. So that's, to me, showcasing that funnel components, that individual, that persona, that leader, and what I'm talking to them about and what I want in front of them, all the way down to when they're signing, a deal with us. So, um, so while to me, whether it's a software product that I'm marketing or a service, that kind of perspective of the engagement with the leader all the way down to revenue, I don't think changes.
Yeah, I like that. And I see what you mean now with having the visual of a funnel. It's like that kind of the customer journey from
Mhm.
awareness
Yeah,
down to consideration and decision. Um, so there's always fewer people as they go through that journey.
yeah,
People drop out when it's not the right fit.
yep.
So I see the funnel differently now in that perspective. So that's helpful because you know me, I come primarily from services. Of
Mhm.
course, I have products companies as clients now, but so I was just trying to translate that for our listeners. Before I let you go, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to share with marketers or CXOs of GovCons out there?
I think my biggest recommendation is, when you start off in your career, depending on where you're at in your career, I think it might seem like imposter syndrome to like act like the CMO if you're early on. And I think, um, especially like women and what have you, like we want to feel over prepared before we like kind of make an ask. I would say, uh, it's never too early. I mean, you're given a role, even if it's a small role within an organization, you can always think bigger and how does your piece, fit in that bigger picture. That should always, it's almost like a muscle, like that strategic muscle that you got to start working, and it'll get easier to think in that mindset the more you try and the more you do, and then it just becomes kind of part of you, and people will notice. People will like, oh wow, she's like thinking further than her role, and that's not ever, I've never run into where that was a negative. You have to have your role like down packed for sure and make good achievements, but always kind of keep thinking. And it can be just like helping other areas. Like, hey, I'd love to like learn more about this or learn more about that. Do you mind if I like help out? And obviously, again, never sacrificing your own metrics for what you're you're being measured on. But um, in the context of learning, always keep learning. Everything's changing all the time. So gotta keep.
I think that's great mentorship advice for folks that are, at an earlier stage of their career. Like, that whole concept of dress for the job you want, right? You have to exhibit some of those qualities early on to be seen that way. And I think for those listeners who are in smaller organizations, it's a real opportunity, right? Because you don't have roles that are so siloed. There's so many gaps in an organization that's small and growing that you can go far outside your swim lanes to take on more responsibility and solve problems for the company if you just kind of flip that switch in your mind to think that way.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I never run PR. And like I said, I've always found it extremely valuable and respectful of the people that hold those positions that are managing communications. And, I go to them more kind of with, like, hey, how can I'd love to get involved. Here's what I can bring from a messaging standpoint and where I'd love to get support. And sometimes they can, and it's great. We collaborate, and sometimes they can't. And so then I decide, I want to outsource this. So, yeah, it's definitely, you gotta mentally get out of your swim lane and learn and keep learning.
Excellent. Karen, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure our listeners will get a lot of valuable advice out of this podcast. So we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.